Good afternoon, everyone. Can I open the meeting today of the Combined Authority for the 6th of November? And we've been experiencing some technical issues, some technical problems. I'm going to try and see whether by switching my camera on, it will hopefully still allow me to be live. So if anything does go wrong, I've got Graham Morgan, who's the deputy today in my absence, who in accordance with Part 4, Section A of the Constitution, paragraph 3.3, Graham will step in should the need arise, but fingers crossed. So can we start the formalities? And I'd like to welcome all those present and all those viewing this remote meeting of the Combined Authority. And the meeting will be broadcast live to the Combined Authority website and available for subsequent viewing. Can I ask that all members and officers please ensure that when you wish to speak, you indicate in the chat. And when you're invited to speak, please mute your microphone and turn it off afterwards. And finally, can everyone ensure their phone is switched to silent, please? Item 8 contains an exempt appendix. Therefore, if we wish to discuss the content of this appendix, Jill will take us through what we need to do at that time. And just at the beginning of the meeting, because it is via remote, we need to confirm that members are present. So if people could respond to indicate if you are present when I read the names out. So the voting members are Cllr Polhill.
Here.
Councillor Morgan.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Baines.
I'm here, Chair.
And Councillor Williamson.
Here, Chair.
And hopefully, because of, again, some technical problems, I think that some of our non-voting members have been able to make it. So Asif, have you been able to connect?
Present, Chair.
Very good. And Councillor Robinson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Present and correct.
And Jane Kennedy.
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Great stuff. Okay, well, so far so good. Unfortunately, too many of these meetings, we've had to start with things which bring, great sadness to people, and there's no escape from what's happening in the world around us. And so again, unfortunately, we're faced with some really sad news when we heard the tragic death of Jenny Dowd, who's the daughter of our friend and colleague Peter Dowd, who's the MP in Sefton, and Bootle. Our thoughts are very much with Peter and his family at this very sad time for them all. On behalf of the Combined Authority, I'd also like to extend our deepest sympathies to Mayor Anderson following the death of his brother Bill, who I knew very well and saw probably every year of the last 20 odd at the St George's Hall Remembrance Sunday. And he will be sorely missed. I was also devastated to hear of the death of a colleague of mine, Councillor Richard McAlinden, suddenly as well from COVID. And I was fortunate enough to work with Richard, firstly, when we served together on the Liverpool City Council, where he represented Warbrek and I represented exactly next door neighbours, really. But also when I was the MP for Liverpool Walton. And he was one of the loveliest, most decent people you could ever wish to meet. And my thoughts are very much with Barbara and his family at this really sad time for them all. And then just this morning, Councillor Mayer, who's not with us today, informed us of the recent bereavement of his father, Ralph. For all those sad announcements, we offer a minute's silence, but also we understand, in addition, that former councillor Ken Cleary from St Helens Council recently passed away, as his councillor Denise Dutton's father, Mr Thomas R. Lewis, who was the Sefton Council mayor in 1995-96, also passed as well. So for all of those people who unfortunately are no longer with us, can we observe a minute's silence and ask Jill to start and to indicate when that minute has concluded? Over to Jill.
Thank you, Chair. We'll start now. Thank you, that's concluded.
Thanks, Jill. And also, because this is our last meeting before Remembrance Sunday, I'd ask that we also observe a minute's silence to remember all those who lost their lives during active service and those who have served in our armed forces. So again, can we observe a minute's silence, please, for Remembrance Sunday?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Jill. And we may not be able to be physically present for the Remembrance Sunday commemorations. I haven't missed one for, I don't know, 20 odd years, but I can assure everybody that we will remember them. Apologies for absence, Trudy.
Thank you, Metro Mayor. We've received apologies from Mayor Anderson, Councillor Mayor, Councillor Sinnott, Councillor Grocott, Barbara Spicer, Councillor Russ Bowden and Gideon Benthoven. Thank you.
Any further apologies from anybody? No. Item 2 is declarations of interest. That's obviously an opportunity for members. Item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting of the Combined Authority, which was held on the 25th of September 2020. Can they be agreed, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 4 is the Metro Mayor announcements, and obviously an awful lot of things to update people on. First of all, to formally welcome Councillor Janette Williamson, who's the leader of Wirral Council, to her first Combined Authority meeting. What a baptism of fire it's been for Janette over the last month or so, but she's really stamped her mark already as the leader of Wirral, and we wish her all the very best in the future. Can I also wish Barbara Spicer, who's not present today, but she was my mayoral advisor for housing, and she's retiring after 6 years as the chief executive of Plus Dane Housing. And Barbara, I understand she started her career in the housing department at Knowsley Council, so she obviously learnt an awful lot, but I very much welcomed and listened to Barbara's advice and guidance, and I'd just like to put on record my thanks for everything that she did as a mayoral advisor. Yesterday, new restrictions came into effect across England, and it means that workers once again are asked to work from home wherever possible, and all non-essential businesses have to be closed. And it's obviously a very deeply worrying time for people across the city region. They've already made enormous sacrifices to support the fight against COVID. And I genuinely do know that there's a lot of anxiety about the impact that these further restrictions will have, specifically on jobs and businesses, but also on people's health and mental health and well-being. And I want to assure everybody in our city region that the Combined Authority is working to do whatever we can to support you through this difficult period. Our city region is known for its sense of solidarity and community spirit, and I know that this will endure through this latest challenge, and we will hopefully see an end to this terrible period through the pandemic in the forthcoming months. Over the past few weeks, however, we started to see case and infection rates falling in our city region, which is of course encouraging. However, they are still very high by national standards, and we have to continue to come together, to work together, to do everything that we can to fight this virus. And I've been clear for some time now that the COVID situation in our city region is very serious. In fact, some of the pressures that we had on our NHS months ago started to indicate what was going to happen, and we've been through an unbelievably difficult time for ICU and other beds, which have caused real concern for everybody. And I know that, however unpopular it may be, it's vital that we all follow the new rules by staying at home wherever possible, and by observing those precautionary things like washing your hands, wearing a face covering, and maintaining social distance that we've called for 8 months now. If anybody wants to see a full list of the restrictions, they can be found on the gov.uk website, and I'd encourage everybody to familiarise themselves with those additional restrictions. But specific to our area, as we know, without a vaccine, then rapid mass testing is integral to efforts to get on top of the virus and drive down our COVID levels. And that's why it is fantastic news for the whole of the city region, and in particular for the city of Liverpool, that they were chosen by government for a rapid mass testing pilot, which we hope, if successful, will be rolled out right the way across the city region and then across the country. A high percentage of people with COVID display no symptoms, they're asymptomatic, and therefore they risk unknowingly spreading the disease amongst their communities. So by testing more people, we can ensure that those with COVID isolate and therefore reduce the spread of the disease. And I'd encourage all of those people who are eligible, which is anybody, it's voluntary. If you want to go and get a test, please do your bit and go and do so. And as one of the ramifications or considerations of Tier 3, we fought very hard about the government's then furlough light scheme, and you'll have seen yesterday that the government finally U-turned on furlough and committed to extending furlough to the end of March. And this is very welcome news for families and for businesses, but it comes after months of campaigning by myself and other local leaders on this call. And I'm glad that the government have finally done the right thing and said that they will maintain 80% furlough, not the 67% that they were offering us when we were put into Tier 3, and for other areas across the north that were put into Tier 3. But I don't think that people will easily forget that the government judged us to be worth 13% less than our southern counterparts. However, question marks remain over the support on offer for the self-employed and other groups, and certainly those people who are, for instance, excluded from the current government support. There are a whole chunks, 3 million people that we believe that have not had anything at all. And so I'll be maintaining my pressure on the government to ensure that these people aren't excluded and aren't forgotten. And just like I think most of the world at the moment, I'm keeping one eye on the American elections, and certainly over the last few days where we've seen things narrowing. And I know there's still some waiting to do, but if the reports that I'm seeing on the television are accurate, then it looks like Joe Biden will be elected the president of the United States. And as a city region with a western-facing port and deep transatlantic links, the outcome of this election, coming as it does just before the conclusion of the Brexit negotiations later this year, is of particular interest to us all. And whilst there's obviously the confirmatory process to conclude, if, as it seems likely, that the result will be in favour of Joe Biden, I'd like to send our congratulations to the likely president-elect and wish him and his family well as he prepares to take up the presidency in a month's time or a couple of months' time. And I'll be writing to him, as I'm sure that at some stage he will visit the UK. I'm writing to him to make certain that he needs to be encouraged to look at areas outside of London and the South. And so with Liverpool and the wider city region's historical connections to America, I think there'd be no better place for him to come and visit than us here. So if he does, I can guarantee him that he'll be made very welcome. And hopefully, you never know, we may well see the new president of the United States coming to visit the Liverpool city region very soon. Fingers crossed. Okay, item 5 then is our first item of business and seeks confirmation of several nominations to the Combined Authority and its committees following some of the council's annual meetings. So Jill Curley, who's our monitoring officer, is going to take us through this report. Jill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report is dealing with a number of changes that have arisen over recent months following September's AGMs that our constituent authorities held, following the appointment of, for example, Councillor Williamson as leader of Wirral Council, who now also becomes your portfolio holder as the report recommends. And there are a number of changes that flow through for Councillor Williamson in respect of the responsibilities that go with that post, such as appointments to the Appointments and Disciplinary Committee, ranging through to appointments on some of our companies that work with us. So those are a number of changes related there to appointments. In addition to that, to your published recommendations, Mr. Chair, which are for the first 4 recommendations, there is a 5th recommendation that I would like you to add, which is to ensure that we appoint Councillor Williamson to the Audit and Governance Committee as well. There is an officer change as well to bring to your attention, and that relates to the Growth Platform Company, with Kirsty McLean coming on as a director to that company. So those are the recommendations A to D, with the additional recommendation for Councillor Williamson to become a member of the Audit and Governance Committee. The report deals with one final issue, which is a constitutional amendment, which requires a unanimous vote. The constitutional issue relates to the level of decision we have in respect of the financial threshold. Decisions over £150,000 are brought to the attention of the Combined Authority. Officers are seeking, which hopefully will be for clear purposes, of matters related to the election, for financial decisions associated with that not to come to before the Combined Authority, and for the financial budget, which is usually around the level of £2 million, to be entrusted to officers to spend that wisely and appropriately in relation to election activity. We hope that this course of action is agreeable to members, and I'm happy to take any comments or thoughts.
Thanks, Jill. Okay, well, we'll do as recommended, as we always do. We will do this on 2 different votes. So the first one is the recommendation to look at A to D on block, and in addition to agree the appointment of Councillor Williamson to the Audit and Governance Committee. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 Okay, we'll take that as agreed. And then the second part, where we do need consensus and unanimity, it's that the Constitution, that we agree the recommendations E as set out on the report on page 12. Could that be agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to item 6. The report sets out the results of the external auditors of the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority's annual accounts for 2019-20, and John Fogarty is going to take us through this report.
Thank you, Chair. The external auditors, first thing says, external auditors presented at length to the Audit and Governance Committee on Wednesday this week. They presented their interim findings. The outstanding issues that are left relate to National Pension Fund issues and are not specific to the Combined Authority. Very pleased to be able to report that in their interim findings they haven't identified any errors or misstatements or material errors or misstatements or any other problems, and they anticipate giving a full unqualified opinion on the statement of accounts. The audit process has been delayed this year for obvious reasons, and but will complete by the 30th of November. So as a result of that slight timing difference from a normal year, the report is seeking a delegation to the Metro Mayor to sign the accounts on behalf of the Combined Authority by the 30th of November, when the audit is complete. That's the statutory deadline this year. So that's all I wish to say on the accounts. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for John? And then if there aren't, can we agree the recommendations are set out on page 17, please?
Agreed.
Okay,
Agreed.
John.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. 7 then, again, will be John, but it's the next report which provides a financial update for the revenue and capital performance for the period through to the 30th of September 2020. And the report also presents a revised revenue budget for our consideration. John.
Thank you. Yes, the report shows the budget position at the end of September this year. The Q1 performance was reported at a previous meeting, and you'll see the biggest shift between Q1 and Q2 financially is to do with the recovery of tunnel toll revenues, which clearly fell to minimal levels in Q1, but have picked up to about 80-90% of pre-COVID levels by summer. Despite that, though, total losses of revenues associated with COVID, and particularly the first lockdown period, were 12 million. And whilst we can offset some of those by deferring some operational and maintenance costs on tunnels, we can't obviously cover all of those losses. This is why the Combined Authority has been asked to revise its budget this year to use around 7 million of balances that were previously earmarked for transport infrastructure purposes, and particularly the rolling stock financing, to employ that in order to set a balanced budget this year. What isn't clear at the moment, and I will report on this at a subsequent meeting when we've got clarity, is the level of government support that we will get. We've had a commitment that there will be a package of government support for those lost revenues, but it's not yet confirmed. But what I would say is that the indications are that it's likely to cover no more than about 30% of the losses. So that will be picked up in Q3's report. That's all I was proposing to say on the Q2 report, but again, happy to answer any questions from members.
Are there any questions for John? Okay, can we therefore agree the recommendations set out on page 181 of the report, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Item 8 is about the Liverpool City Region hospitality, leisure and retail sector, and people will know, following the City Region being put into Tier 3 by the government, we secured funding of up to £30 million for the City Region to fund businesses impacted by those additional restrictions. So this is Tier 3. Mark will take us briefly through that report.
Thank you, Chair. As you suggest, the report confirms the establishment of a City Region Fund to support areas of our economy badly impacted by the latest coronavirus restrictions. So focusing really on leisure, hospitality and now the non-essential retail sector. The fund comprises 30 million secured from government on entry into Tier 3 several weeks ago, as well as a £10 million local commitment. Disbursements are already underway, so we have up to £12.5 million being released to businesses right now in the hospitality and leisure sector. It is important, however, that we should note the continual change in context and requirements around this fund. We moved several weeks ahead of any national guidance or indeed any national restrictions. So to some extent, we are the forerunner of what's happening in terms of supporting this sector. And that does give rise to certain risks, particularly for Frank, because he's agreed under emergency measures the release of £20 million already. So Frank being the head of the paid service, of course. We can mitigate that with diligent work on the part of officers. So the report asks you to note the establishment of the fund, the source of the funding, and the progress in providing support to impacted businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions? Asif, did you want to come in?
Yeah, can I just comment? I'd just like to commend everybody who's worked on this. I think it's a tremendous proposition and well put together, and a lot of effort's gone in on behalf of the business community. I just want to thank the CA, the local leaders, the chief execs, and everybody who's worked on this. It's great to see this working and something come together during this difficult time for businesses. It's incredibly important and very much appreciated. So thank you for everybody, because I know a lot of hard work and effort has gone in by every individual working on this, and it's great to be at the lead and the forefront of this, and will help many, many businesses and many people to keep the livelihood going. So thank you very much to everybody who's been involved in this.
Thanks, Asif. And just on behalf of the officers who've had to deal with this, there's a complexity of legislation and restrictions around the way in which the money can be spent and parameters and all, and they've had to navigate a way through, because we want this money to get out of the door as quickly as it's possible to do. We don't want it sitting there. We want it to be helping businesses, and we'd like to thank yourself, Asif, and Janette, and all the chambers and every other business support agency for helping us during this difficult time, because the more we can pull together, the more likely we are of saving those businesses, so that when we do come out of coronavirus, whenever that is, we will have businesses and an economy to call an economy. So that's the idea about trying to get money to businesses to support them as quickly as we can, but it's extremely, extremely difficult at times. Can we therefore agree the recommendations that are set out on page 189 and 190, please?
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, Chair.
Great. Okay, then we'll go on to item 9, and this is a report which is from Councillor Morgan, and it's about the housing and investment strategy for the city region. So over to yourself, Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce this report, which presents the Liverpool City Region Housing Investment Strategy for consideration. The draft strategy has been prepared in true partnership between the Combined Authority and the 6 local councils and our colleagues at OHMS England. By working together, we've been able to set out the city's region's housing investment priorities for the years ahead. And we've also set out and we will drive our change in housing offer by targeting investment to provide a wider choice of new homes, improving the quality of our existing homes, and maximising the wider opportunities that house building can bring. The strategy will inform local bids into national funding programmes, but most importantly, Chair, it will also ensure that the investment in housing meets the needs of our city's region residents and communities. The Housing and Spatial Planning Board will oversee the delivery of the strategy using the same partnership approach that has been crucial in developing it. Colleagues, I'm delighted to move the recommendation that we approve the draft housing investment strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Morgan. Any questions for Graham from anybody? No? Okay then, can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 199, please?
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Great, okay. It's over to you again, Councillor Morgan. The item 10 is the report sets out the engagement process as part of the development of the spatial development strategy, another large body of work that's being concluded with partnership approaches. So over to you, Graham.
Once again, thank you, Chair. Colleagues, you'll know that we've previously started to discuss the plans for our spatial development strategy with our local communities. Today's report provides an update on plans to continue that engagement. Starting next week, we want to carry on those conversations about what local people want from the strategy. The report proposes that we'll build on the discussions that we had last time, showing how people's input has shaped the draft vision for the strategy and its core objectives. Despite the significant challenges arising from COVID-19 pandemic and its economic impacts, we're committed to building back better for our communities. Spatial development strategy is one way in which we can do that. We know that the pandemic means that we will have to engage in a different way than we usually do in order to make sure that everybody remains safe. But we're committed to making sure the local communities can shape the future of the city region together. This report sets out how we're going to do that now and next year, and I'd like to encourage everyone to get involved. With that in mind, colleagues, I'm pleased to move the recommendations within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions for Graham on that issue? No? Okay. Can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 217 of the report, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Okay, as always with these things, it's a hat trick because item 11 is about the plan and white paper, and the report sets out a proposed response to the recently published planning white paper. Again, Graham's going to take us through that.
Well, thank you, Chair. The government has drawn up what it thinks about the future of spatial planning should look like as part of the planning white paper consultation. Unfortunately, their version of the future does not align with ours. Their version significantly reduces local democracy within the planning system and undermines the devolution we've secured as a city region. As you've heard about in the previous item, the Liverpool City region is clear that local areas are best placed to shape their neighbourhoods. Proper engagement with our local communities is the best way to achieve this. So I'm pleased that following a number of discussions on the proposals, our officers have developed a response which highlights the flaws in the government's proposals and underlines the importance of local decision making. I'm sure that each of our local authorities will have also submitted their own individual responses to the white paper. But it's important that together as a city region, we also make our position clear about strategic planning issues and that we make clear to the government that we have major concerns about their proposals. Colleagues, the response sets out the position and I hope you can agree it today at the city region's formal response to the government. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Graham. Any questions for Graham on any of that? No? Okay. Can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 437, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Thanks for that. Listen, just before we do move on to the next item, I just think that it's important that we take the opportunity to thank Councillor Morgan for the extraordinary effort that he's put into his work on his portfolio to deliver on really three key areas of work for the Combined Authority. And it's obviously not just Graham. He'll be the first to say he's been supported by, for instance, Combined Authority officers, but also by Mike Harden, who's the Chief Executive of Knowsley Council, and others. So I just think sometimes we should be recognising great efforts, and there's been great effort put into these 3 pieces of work. So thanks very much from all of us for that.
Here. Thanks, Graham.
Chair, and can I just put on record as well that the immense support I've had from Councillor Trish Hardy, who's got a vast amount of knowledge in this field as well, and it's been really valuable, her input and her support for the past year. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you're right to do that, Graham. And obviously, we spoke about which order to do it in. The whole thing about having a deputy portfolio holder was to have somebody who could bring expertise and, you know, sometimes a lived experience of a topic and a subject. And I think Trish does that very, very well on your particular portfolio. So again, I'll just echo those comments. It's been a great teamwork. Okay, so we'll move on to item 12, which is the report presents a number of requested changes to previously agreed SIF projects. Obviously, there have been changes because of COVID. So, Mark, you're going to take us through this report.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry for the delay. Material changes to SIF projects require CA approval as determined by our investment strategy and indeed our constitution. The specific changes in the report relate to 2 highways projects and 2 skills capital projects. All of these have been disrupted to some extent by COVID and the ongoing restrictions. And we propose changes to enable them to continue. But just as importantly, it demonstrates that we're continuing our focus on delivery despite the difficulties, focusing particularly on performance with local growth funds and the gain share monies that we've got available. And it's on this basis that I recommend the changes to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Are there any questions for Mark on anything? If not, can we agree the recommendations are set out on page 449 of the report, please?
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed. Okay, so we'll move on to item 13, which is the report which seeks approval to accept in principle the offer of nearly £2 million, £1,995,000 for ESF funding for household into work. Can I agree that in principle, is everybody okay with the recommendations as set out on page 455?
Agreed.
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 Thanks. We don't normally have any dissent when we're being asked, do we want some money? There's another report on item 14, which seeks to approve the acceptance of £5.5 million ESF funding for the Skills and Apprenticeship Hub. Can we also agree those recommendations? They're on page 459.
Agreed.
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 Agreed, Chair.
Great. Okay, so then we're on to item 15, which is public question time. And Trudy, we haven't had any public questions.
That's correct, yes, we haven't received any public questions.
And the same on 16, petitions and statements.
Yes, also correct, we haven't received any petitions or statements.
Item 17 then is the minutes of the Transport Committee, and Liam normally points out any salient points from the Transport Committee, which is held on the 27th of February 2020. Anything we should be aware of, Liam?
Yeah, thanks very much, Steve. Obviously, because of the way COVID has interrupted the cycle of meetings, these are minutes from over 6 months ago, which actually feels more like a decade ago. I think the key point is that the main aspect of the meeting was going through the development of plans around HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail, all the way into the city region and the city. Obviously, that continues to develop accordingly, but we scrutinise that in a lot of detail because we know how vital that is to the future of our region's prosperity.
Thanks, Liam. Can we note that report? Thank you.
Note that report, Chair.
Okay, so it's recommended that due to the content of the next report, it is considered as an exempt item in the absence of the press and public. Can I therefore ask for someone to move this resolution for the reasons set out in the agenda?
Move part 2, Chair.
Thank you. So the Combined Authority to approve the recommendation is that